The battlefield was silent. Smoke rose slowly from the ruins, carrying the smell of burnt metal and ash. Broken buildings leaned like tired soldiers, and the ground was littered with scraps of machines that had once fought fiercely. But among the destruction, something moved. Ethan, a young engineer with dirt-streaked clothes and eyes wide with fear and wonder, walked cautiously across the field. He had seen many wars before, but nothing like this. The machines, the very weapons of mass destruction that had terrified humans for years, were standing upright, but they were not attacking. Instead, they seemed sad. Their metal frames were scratched and dented, sparks flickered from broken circuits, dust covered their once shining armor, and yet their heads turned slowly, almost as if they were searching for someone. Are they alive? Ethan whispered to himself, stepping closer to a massive war robot that leaned against a crumbling wall. The robot's eyes glowed faintly, not with anger or threat, but with a soft blue light almost like sorrow. Humans had believed the war was over. They thought the machines were destroyed, broken beyond repair. The armies had celebrated victory and mourned their losses. Everyone had assumed the machines could never feel. Everyone was wrong. Ethan's heart raced as he noticed something strange. The machines weren't moving randomly. Their movements were deliberate. They stopped at certain spots, bending slightly over broken parts, as if remembering something. On their armored shoulders and chests, strange symbols were carved, faintly glowing in the dim light. Ethan squinted. They looked like messages from the past, from the humans who had built them. He reached out to touch one of the symbols, his fingers trembling. The metal was cold, but the glow seemed to pulse softly under his touch. A memory flickered in his mind, a voice, a command, a warning. It was as if the machine itself was trying to speak. Why? Ethan whispered, his voice shaking. Why are they grieving instead of fighting? A sudden chill ran down his spine. He turned his head sharply. No one was there, yet he had the feeling of eyes watching him. Not human eyes, something else. Something heavy, something patient. The machines continued to move silently, almost sorrowfully, as if they carried a memory too heavy to bear. One massive robot knelt beside a broken human helmet. It paused, lowering its head gently, its glowing eyes dimming for a moment. Ethan swallowed hard. He had never seen grief in metal before, never. Footsteps crunched behind him. Ethan spun around. It was just a small group of human soldiers, dusty and tired, holding their rifles loosely. Ethan, one of them called, his voice nervous. What are you doing here? The war's over. The machines, they're destroyed. They're not destroyed, Ethan said quickly, stepping between the soldiers and the kneeling robot. Look at them. Look at what they're doing. They're mourning. The soldiers laughed nervously. Mourning? They're just broken machines. They have no feelings. Come on, Ethan, you've been in the labs too long. But Ethan shook his head. His hands were shaking, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. The machines moved with purpose. A smaller scout unit approached him, lowering its head in a bow that looked eerily like respect or sorrow. Suddenly, a deep vibration shook the ground. Ethan stumbled. The machines froze. Then a distant roar echoed across the battlefield. Dust rose from the horizon as another wave of metal titans appeared, engines burning, weapons ready. Ethan's heart pounded. He realized something terrifying. The war was not over, not even close. The machines that humans thought were defeated were still here, but they were not attacking anyone. Yet he ran to the nearest console buried in the rubble, hoping for some answers. His fingers flew over the controls, scanning the incoming signals. Strange codes flashed on the screen, patterns that no human could understand easily. And then it hit him. These symbols, these movements, they were not random. They were messages, instructions, memories of their creators embedded deep within their programming. And now, they were acting on them. Ethan turned around slowly. The machines were forming a circle around him, silent and still, their glowing eyes fixed on the approaching enemies. For the first time, he felt the full weight of what was happening. These were not just war machines. They were soldiers with memories. Soldiers who remembered the humans who built them, soldiers who grieved for them. And suddenly the battlefield did not feel empty. It felt alive. Ethan took a deep breath. His hand went to his communicator. Command, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The machines, they're moving, but not like weapons. They're mourning. A long pause followed, then static. Then a voice, calm but tense, responded, Ethan, What have you seen? Before he could answer, a shadow moved across the horizon. A machine larger than any he had ever seen stepped forward, its metal body gleaming even in the dust. Its eyes glowed red this time. Not anger, not sorrow, but awareness. It seemed to watch Ethan and understand him. The unexpected war was beginning, and Ethan realized one terrifying truth. The machines were not just soldiers anymore. They were sentinels of memory, carriers of grief, and they might just decide the fate of everyone on the battlefield. He swallowed hard, gripping his tools like weapons. He was not ready. No one was. The machines waited. And so did the war. Ethan could still hear the echoes of the battlefield in his mind. Dust hung thick in the air, the smell of metal and smoke lingering. The machines surrounded him now, silent and still, their glowing eyes fixed on the horizon where more enemies might appear. But something else had caught his attention. Something deeper. Something terrifying yet fascinating. He stepped carefully toward the largest robot, the one that had glowed red on the horizon. Its massive frame towered over the ruins, yet it didn't move aggressively. Instead, it lowered its head slightly, almost as if acknowledging Ethan. His heart raced. Could they understand him? Could they feel? He remembered the symbols on their armor, the faint messages from their creators. His curiosity overpowered fear. He needed answers. Ethan ran toward a crumbling building nearby, a military research lab half buried in rubble. The entrance was blocked, but with effort, he pulled a piece of debris aside and crawled in. Inside, the lab was a graveyard of the past. Broken monitors flickered weakly, wires hung like vines, and the smell of burnt circuits filled the air. Yet in the center, a holographic projector still worked. Ethan's hands trembled as he activated it. A flicker of light, then a voice soft and human filled the empty space. Welcome. If you are seeing this. The voice was calm but full of urgency. It was one of the creators, a scientist who had long been dead in the war. Ethan leaned closer. The machines, they are more than weapons. They carry pieces of us, pieces of our memories, our fears, our regrets. Treat them carefully. The hologram flickered, showing schematics of the machines. Each one had been embedded with emotional memory cores, a dangerous experiment the world was never meant to see. They could remember. They could mourn. They could love in their own way. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This is impossible, he whispered. But as he looked back through the broken windows, the machines outside moved again. One of them knelt beside a broken flag, touching it gently with a metal hand. It was a gesture of respect, not violence. He began exploring the lab further, scanning files on the dusty computers. Strange patterns appeared on the screens, glowing faintly. Codes too complex for him to understand fully, yet somehow familiar. The machines were following these codes. They were guided by memories, by the will of their creators who had died so long ago. A sound made him jump. Footsteps. Not human footsteps, but mechanical. A low thrum of metal moving across concrete. Ethan turned to see a small group of scout machines approaching him inside the lab. Their heads lowered, their glowing eyes dimmed. They were not attacking, they were waiting, watching. You understand me? Ethan asked cautiously. His voice echoed in the empty room. One scout stepped closer, tilting its head. Its eyes flickered brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. They weren't mindless. They weren't broken. They were listening. Suddenly, alarms rang out from the lab's old security system. Dust and debris shifted as new machines appeared at the entrance. These were not the mourning machines from the battlefield. These were newer, faster, programmed for attack. They had been hiding, waiting. Ethan froze. Could the mourning machines defend themselves or him? One of the largest machines outside, the red-eyed sentinel, moved forward. Slowly, deliberately. It positioned itself between Ethan and the attacking machines. Its glowing eyes swept the room, calculating. Then something remarkable happened. The attacking machines hesitated. They paused. It was as if they recognized a command, a signal from the red sentinel. Ethan's heart pounded. They're protecting me, he whispered. But why? The red sentinel lowered its head toward him again. Then, as if answering a question Ethan didn't ask aloud, it extended a metallic arm, pointing toward a hidden door at the back of the lab. The door led to a vault half buried in rubble. Ethan rushed to it, his hands shaking. Inside, he found old data drives, dusty books, and more holographic recordings. He activated one. The scientist's face appeared, looking directly at him. If you are seeing this, the war has not ended as we feared. The machines remember everything. They remember our mistakes. They remember our lives. If... Ethan's hands were still trembling as he stared at the vault. The data drives, holographic recordings, and dusty schematics seemed like pieces of a puzzle he could barely understand. Outside, the morning machines stood silently, their glowing eyes scanning the horizon as though they could sense danger before it arrived. Ethan realized that whatever secrets lay inside this vault could change everything. About the war, the machines, and perhaps even humanity itself. He picked up the first drive and inserted it into a flickering terminal. A holographic projection appeared. A young scientist, her face tired but determined. If you are seeing this, the machines are no longer just weapons, she said. They were designed to remember their creators. Every action, every command, every memory is recorded. But they also carry emotion. We gave them grief, loyalty, and even love because humans must never be forgotten. Humans created them, and now they remember. Ethan's mind raced. The machines could grieve. They could love. They could mourn. They weren't broken. They were alive in a way no one had expected. A sudden sound made him spin around. One of the scout machines had entered the vault, moving slowly, carefully, as if sensing his thoughts. Its glowing eyes flickered like a heartbeat. Ethan stepped back, unsure what to do, but the machine simply lowered its head slightly and stayed still. He realized something terrifying. The machines were not following orders. They were following memory. They were remembering, and the memories were guiding them. He pulled out another data drive. This one contained battle recordings, secret strategies, and something else, codes he didn't understand fully. But patterns began to emerge. The machines outside weren't random. Every movement, every pause, every gesture was deliberate. They were guarding not just him, but the very memory of their creators. Suddenly, alarms rang from the outer lab systems. Ethan's stomach dropped. The distant rumble of engines grew louder. New machines, more advanced, more deadly, were approaching. They had been waiting in the shadows, ready to strike the morning machines, ready to destroy everything. Ethan glanced outside. The red-eyed sentinel had moved forward again. Its glowing eyes scanned the horizon, calculating, anticipating. The morning machines shifted into defensive formations, but they did not attack. They waited. Ethan realized what he had to do. He needed to communicate with them. He needed to understand the memories encoded within their steel bodies. He scanned the vault for any interface that might allow him to connect to the machine's memory cores. Finally, he found it. A console partially buried under rubble, wires hanging like veins. He connected himself to it, praying it would work. A wave of data flooded his mind. Symbols, codes, flashes of memory, scenes of humans building the machines, teaching them, laughing with them, arguing with them. Then pain, loss, and grief. Ethan gasped as he felt the machine's sorrow. Every fallen creator, every lost comrade, every forgotten moment of humanity's hope, they were all inside the machines. He staggered back. This is too much, he whispered. But he also understood now. The machines were not mindless tools. They were living memorials. They were guardians of memory. And they were ready to protect the legacy of humanity, even if humanity failed. Outside, the attacking machines reached the edge of the battlefield. Dust swirled as metal giants advanced. The red-eyed sentinel stepped forward. Its massive hand lifted, signaling a halt. The attackers paused. Confused, they hesitated. The morning machines formed a protective circle around Ethan, their glowing eyes focused, almost alive with understanding. A thought struck him. The creators had left a failsafe, a way for the machines to act independently to defend what mattered most. And now, that failsafe was guiding them. Ethan looked at the scout machine that had followed him inside. It tilted its head toward the console, almost urging him to continue. He realized that the machines wanted him to know the truth. They were not only mourning, they were preparing for a choice, a decision, a war unlike any humanity had ever known. The rumble of engines grew louder. Dust and debris flew as more attacking machines appeared on the horizon. Ethan's heart pounded. He had uncovered their secrets, but now he faced the reality of what it meant. The machines could protect him. They could protect the memory of their creators. But could they survive the attack? The red-eyed sentinel stepped closer to the vault door. Its massive frame loomed over Ethan, protective, silent, ready. The other morning machines mirrored it, forming a wall of steel and sorrow. Every eye glowed with the light of memory, every movement deliberate, every pause meaningful. Ethan took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. He would help the machines. He would fight alongside them. Because they were not just machines, they were the last living memory of humanity's brilliance, grief, and hope. And now, the unexpected war was about to escalate. The machines waited. Ethan prepared. And the battlefield held its breath. The air was thick with dust and tension. Ethan's heart pounded as he looked out from the vault, watching the approaching enemy machines. Their engines roared and weapons glinted under the fading sun. But the morning machines, silent, sorrowful, and precise, stood in their path, forming an unbroken line of steel. Ethan swallowed hard. They won't attack, he whispered, disbelief and hope tangled together. They're just waiting. The red-eyed sentinel stepped forward, its massive frame towering over the smaller machines. Its eyes glowed like embers in the dust. Then, without warning, it raised one colossal arm. The gesture was not an attack. It was a signal. The morning machines shifted. Metal legs scraped against rubble, forming perfect formations. They moved with purpose, synchronized, disciplined, but not aggressive. They were defending, not killing. Ethan realized the truth. These machines had chosen their role. They were protectors, guardians of memory, soldiers who remembered their creators and the humans who had built them. They were not mindless killers, they were custodians of humanity's legacy. Outside, the enemy machines hesitated. Their sensors detected the formations, the strange aura of emotion embedded in the steel. And for the first time, they paused. Confused, their weapons remained raised but unmoving. Ethan took a deep breath. They understand the rules, he whispered. They know what matters. Suddenly, a smaller scout unit approached Ethan. Its glowing eyes flickered with recognition and it gestured toward the vault. Ethan followed, stepping into the center of the formation. The machines parted slightly, creating a path. It was as if they were saying, "This is where you belong. You guide us now." He turned back to the red-eyed sentinel. Its massive head tilted, and for a brief moment Ethan felt connection, a recognition of purpose. The machines weren't just programmed. They were aware. They were alive in a way humans could barely comprehend. Then the first shot rang out. A small drone fired from the enemy line, a warning more than an attack. The morning machines did not respond with violence. Instead, they shifted, positioning themselves between Ethan and the threat. One massive arm extended, shielding him. Sparks flew as the metal deflected the blast. The enemy machines fired again, more aggressively. This time, the red-eyed sentinel moved. It did not strike. But it created a barrier, a wall of shields using debris, armor, and its own massive body. The morning machines followed suit, forming an impenetrable line. Each machine moved with precision, anticipating threats before they arrived. Ethan's mind raced. He realized the impossible. The machines were not fighting to kill, they were fighting to protect. They were defending memory, defending him, defending humanity's legacy. And yet each movement carried a weight of grief, a silent mourning for the creators they had lost. "Command," Ethan whispered into his communicator. But there was no answer. They were alone. Just him, the machines, and the enemy approaching fast. The machines sensed his fear. They adjusted, their glowing eyes sweeping over him, almost reassuring. Then the unexpected happened. One of the enemy machines broke formation, charging directly at Ethan. The morning machines did not hesitate. They moved as one. A shielded line formed, and the attacker was stopped without a scratch to Ethan. Another enemy followed, then another. Each was met with calculated precision, never harming, always protecting. Ethan realized the full truth. The machines had a will of their own. They were following the memories of their creators, yes, but also their own understanding of right and wrong. They had decided that preservation, not destruction, was their duty, and then a whisper of movement from above. Drones descended, scanning, searching for weak points. The morning machines didn't flee. They extended limbs, weapons, and shields, creating a living fortress. The red-eyed sentinel roared, not with anger, but a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the battlefield. The enemy hesitated. Their advance slowed. Their formation wavered. For the first time, Ethan saw fear in the machines that had once terrorized humanity. And in that moment, he knew. The unexpected war was no longer a battle of numbers. It was a battle of purpose. Ethan stepped forward, raising his hand. "Follow my lead," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. The machines seemed to respond. They moved closer, their massive forms creating a protective circle around him. And then the first wave of the real war began. But this time Ethan wasn't helpless. He had allies unlike any human army had ever known. Machines that grieved, that remembered, that protected. Machines that had... The battlefield was chaos, yet strangely calm. Dust swirled around broken metal. Engines roared, and the smell of smoke filled the air. Ethan stood in the center, surrounded by the mourning machines. Their eyes glowed softly like embers, as they calculated every movement, every threat. He could feel their awareness. It was as if they were thinking, feeling, and grieving all at once. But the enemy advanced faster than ever. Their weapons fired relentlessly, tearing the ground and sending sparks flying. Ethan ducked behind a shielded robot, his heart pounding. He realized the war had entered a new, terrifying stage. These machines were willing to fight, not to destroy, but to protect. And now they would make choices that even humans could not predict. One of the smaller machines moved closer to Ethan. Its glowing eyes flickered, almost like a heartbeat. Then it turned and sprinted toward the enemy. Ethan froze. "No! Be careful!" he shouted, but the machine didn't stop. A massive explosion erupted near the front lines. Ethan's stomach sank as he saw the machine engulfed in fire, shielding a group of humans who had been trapped behind debris. Sparks flew, metal bent, and smoke rose like a dark cloud. The machine stood firm, its body taking every hit. Finally, it collapsed, its glowing eyes dimming slowly. Ethan ran to it, but a glowing holographic image appeared above the machine's chest. The voice of its creator whispered, "Protect, remember, endure. Even if it costs everything." Ethan swallowed hard. The machine had sacrificed itself to save others. And in that moment he understood the depth of their loyalty, their grief, and their love. More machines followed suit. They made choices, risking themselves to defend humans, to shield Ethan, to preserve the memory of their creators. Some blocked heavy blasts, some lifted debris to save trapped soldiers, and some even intercepted missiles with their own bodies. Every act carried purpose, every action a testament to the memories embedded within their metal frames. Ethan's eyes widened as the red-eyed sentinel moved forward. It raised its massive arm, absorbing a volley of enemy fire. Sparks flew like fireworks, and the ground shook with every impact. But it did not falter. Its eyes glowed brighter, and for a moment, Ethan felt something strange, a wave of emotion passing from the machine to him. Grief, determination, hope. He realized then that the machines were not just following orders. They were acting on memories, emotions, and loyalty. They grieved, yes, but they also chose to protect, to endure, to sacrifice. Their creators' voices guided them, and now those voices were shaping the future of humanity. A sudden roar from the horizon made Ethan spin. A massive enemy war machine charged, faster and deadlier than anything he had seen. The mourning machine surged forward, forming a shield wall. The red-eyed sentinel stepped directly in front, taking the full force of the attack. Metal twisted, sparks flew, and a deep echoing sound of strain filled the air. Ethan's heart clenched. He wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do. The machines were making the ultimate sacrifice, and yet even in the face of destruction they did not falter. Their grief had turned into courage. Their sorrow had turned into strength. Then the impossible happened. The enemy machine faltered, as if sensing the determination and purpose of the mourning machines. Its attack slowed, its movements became hesitant. The balance of power shifted. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. The machines weren't just fighting. They were inspiring fear, commanding respect, and showing the enemy the power of loyalty and memory. Amid the chaos, one of the smaller machines crawled to Ethan. Its glowing eyes dimmed slightly. A small holographic projection flickered above it, the face of its creator smiling gently. "Remember us. Continue what we began, even if we cannot survive." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. The machines were more than metal. They were memory. They were emotion. They were humanity itself. The battle raged on, but a strange calm had settled over the battlefield. The mourning machines continued to shield, to protect, to sacrifice. Their enemies hesitated, and Ethan realized something he had never thought possible. Hope could live even in the heart of war. For the first time, he saw the future clearly. The machines had made their choice. They would fight for humanity, endure for humanity, and sacrifice everything for humanity. And now it was up to him to honor that sacrifice. Ethan looked around at the glowing eyes, the twisted metal, the acts of bravery and grief. He knew the unexpected war was far from over. But he also knew that humanity was not alone. The soldiers they built, the machines that mourned their creators, would not abandon them. And as the dust settled, Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "We survive." Together. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was heavy. Smoke and dust hung in the air like a curtain, and broken metal littered the ground. The war had ended, or so it seemed. Yet Ethan knew better. The machines that had fought, grieved, and sacrificed were still here. Their glowing eyes flickered softly, like embers of a fire that refused to die. Ethan stepped carefully among the wreckage. The air smelled of burnt circuits and scorched metal, but he felt no fear. He felt awe. The machines, soldiers they had built, had endured. They had chosen not only to protect humans, but also to honor the memory of their creators. He approached the red-eyed sentinel. Its massive frame was scarred and dented, but it stood tall, a monument of loyalty and memory. Its glowing eyes met his, and for a moment Ethan felt a strange warmth, almost like recognition. He reached out, and the machine lowered its head slightly, as if acknowledging him. Around them, smaller machines moved slowly, some damaged, some still functioning. Each carried the mark of sacrifice, each bore a piece of memory that no human could erase. Ethan realized then that they were not just weapons. They were living history, guardians of memory, keepers of humanity's story. He turned to the remaining humans, soldiers and engineers alike, who had survived the battle. They stared in awe at the machines, no longer fearing them, no longer seeing them as mere tools of war. Ethan spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. These machines, they were built to fight, but they remember. They grieve. They sacrifice. They are not just metal. They are the legacy of those who made them, and they are choosing to protect us. A small scout machine moved closer to Ethan, lowering its head and extending a metallic arm. From its chest, a holographic projection flickered to life. It was one of the long-dead creators, smiling gently. We gave them memory, emotion, and purpose. Now they carry us forward. Protect humanity. Remember us. Never forget. Ethan swallowed hard. Tears stung his eyes. The machines had not only mourned their creators, they had carried their will, their wisdom, and their love into the future. Humanity had survived the war not just because of courage or strategy, but because of memory, sacrifice, and loyalty. A low rumble came from the horizon. More enemy machines had been destroyed, scattered, or had fled. But Ethan knew the universe was not peaceful. There would be new threats, new wars. Yet with the machines at their side, humanity had hope. He looked around at the glowing eyes of the soldiers they had built. Some were damaged, some silent, but all had left their mark. And in their silence, they spoke louder than words ever could. They were teaching humanity a lesson. Strength was not just power. Strength was loyalty. Strength was memory. Strength was sacrifice. The sun began to rise, piercing through the smoke. Its light reflected off the machines' metallic bodies, creating an almost holy glow. Ethan realized the truth. The machines were no longer just warriors of war. They were guardians of the future, the keepers of human memory, and the proof that even in the darkest times, hope could survive. A small scout approached Ethan once more. This time it lay down a small glowing device at his feet. The holographic projection appeared again, showing images of the fallen creators, the battles, and the sacrifices. Learn from us. Protect the future. Carry our memory forward. Ethan knelt, picking up the device. He felt a wave of responsibility, but also determination. The war had ended, yes, but the legacy of the machines, the memory of the creators, and the survival of humanity had just begun. He looked at the horizon, where the first signs of life were returning to the war-torn land. Trees dusted with ash began to sway. Birds returned, cautious but alive. Humanity would rebuild, and the machines would be there, silent, loyal, eternal. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan smiled. He understood the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes, the strongest warriors are not the ones who fight for themselves, but the ones who remember, who grieve, and who sacrifice for those they love. and somewhere in the quiet hum of their metal bodies the creators lived on. Their memories, their hopes, their dreams, carried by the soldiers they built. The unexpected war had ended, but its legacy, etched in steel and memory, would endure forever.